Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are on YouTube and you see a little link down below, you can actually join the conversation in a future episode by joining us in Zoom. If you are here for the first time and you're an attendee and you see all these panelists and you're wondering, how do I become a panelist? Well, everyone, they have good audio, good video, good internet, and they joined early. We opened the doors at 6 a.m. So at 6, we start talking. I can't promise anything from 6 to 7. It's kind of the original hour, and we all just kind of meander through it and figure out little technical issues, but it's usually a pretty interesting conversation. But it starts at 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Between 6:30 and 6:40, we distribute the Discord link. The Discord link is where over 700 of us keep talking about this stuff between all the shows. So you're more than welcome to come. By the time I do this announcement, it's closed, so you have to come another day. Between 7:40 and 7:45 Pacific Standard, we start doing mic checks. Now, mic checks are a time for us to kind of figure stuff out. Once we start doing mic checks, the panel is closed. So that's what our panel is going to look like for the next 2 hours. It's also a great time, if you're an attendee, to ask questions and vote on questions to kind of set up and drive our show. This is really a show that's done by everyone. I don't know if I've ever seen a show that's more driven by everyone than this one. So anyway, we really depend on the attendees to ask questions, to vote on questions while we're doing the mic checks and getting us all set up and really deciding what we're going to do for the next hour. From 7 to 8, we're going to answer those questions. We'll at least talk about them. I can't promise we'll answer them, but we'll talk about them. And then from 8 to 9, we have kind of a more vertical hour. That is when we talk about something specific. Today, we're going to have open questions about audio. So if you have audio, put audio : and then your question, and we'll save that for the second hour. So just a general conversation about audio this week. Tomorrow, our second hour is remote lens control systems with Chris Summers. Chris Summers kind of runs our Wednesdays most weeks and has something new about cameras that we get to discuss. So remote lens control systems is tomorrow. Thursday, Brian Vander Ark, who is the lead singer for the Verve Pipe, will be joining us to talk about his journey and where he's at and play a little music for us. So he's going to be here on the second hour of Thursday. And then Friday and Saturday are they're both dedicated to education, because a lot of teachers and educators are trying to figure out what to do with all these tools. And so 8 to 9 on Fridays, and then 9 to 11 on Saturdays, we're dedicating right now to education and answering media related questions for educators. So that's kind of the lineup. If you are interested if you're watching this and you just got here, you'll see a link and we'll post it again. If you're in the chat inside of Zoom, you need to go to the chat that's outside of Zoom, and there's a link there for you to jump into it. You'll see that pop up. If you want to share what we're doing here with other folks, that's the link you want to use. Don't share your own link. People will come in as you. So there's the link that works. I just put it in the chat in Mukana. And now we're going to go ahead and start with the questions. So Chris, do we have any questions ready to go?
We most certainly do. Jeffrey Powers says, Topaz Labs video enhancement AI software for blurry videos. Has anyone used it? How well does it work?
I have not used it.
I guess not as good as the focus control. It's just a...
that was horrible.
Wild guess.
But true.
I don't know if any of us have
stunning video enhancements with groundbreaking AI technology.
We'll have to see if they'll. Is it Jeffrey? And it's Mac and PC?
Yes, free trial, Windows and Mac. I will tell you this: it is stunning, and it is also groundbreaking.
Yeah, as far as I know, it is Mac and PC. I've been seeing it. They've been doing a lot of sponsors on Facebook, and they have like a super free trial, and then like a $60 payment for the software. So I didn't know if it was worth buying.
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
I saw it used. This is quite a few years ago, so maybe it's gotten better, but the results were horrifying. It was awful.
Okay, there you go. Stuart?
I've seen adverts on Facebook as well, and most of them are done backwards, where they actually take a good image and they blur it. Frankly, when it comes to all of this sort of software, get it right in camera.
Yeah. I mean, there's oftentimes though we end up with a situation where we have footage that you can't get. It was shot somewhere, and you're trying to recover that footage because it's a documentary or it was shot and then you can't go back. And I mean, you look at the Patriot. I'm sure they would have loved to have software like this for the Patriot, because once you saw it in 4K, you realized that it was half of the film was shot out of focus. So like half of the film is out of focus. So I'm not sure exactly what happened there. Anyway, next question.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I've come to the point where if I see something advertised on Facebook, I throw it out immediately. Kyle Hammond says, can Alex walk through the multi-layer Photoshop process to create an overlay for my ATEM Mini? He did this with Victor the other day, but don't think it was, I don't think it was on YouTube while YouTube was recording.
Oh, yeah. So I don't know if I can pull it out in Photoshop right now, but I can, and someone should remind me. I owe Victor one first, a countdown clock, and then I'll do something on this, a little recording on this. So just remind me of it. I'm stacking up what I have to, these little movies that I have to create. So, but what you want to do is you have your something over transparency. So you type your text in. You then need to create an alpha channel. So you can just command click your layer and it'll select the transparency, and then you just create a new alpha channel in Photoshop, an actual alpha channel. Then you take that alpha channel. The easiest way to do this is you take that alpha channel and you copy it and put it in a layer above whatever you want to key and set it to multiply. You're actually pre-multiplying it over top of that. And then you save that out as a target file, and it will come in overlaid properly with the right transparency built in. Now, if you're using Affinity Photo, which I use a lot for these things now, you can have your text and everything else over transparency and just save it out as a target. It'll do the pre-multiplication on its own. So you don't need to do that with Affinity Photo, and you may be able to do it if it's just over transparency. I've had some issues with Photoshop doing that. Now, Photoshop has a plugin that for the ATEM, that if you have it over transparency and you save it with the plugin, it'll automatically come in to your switcher with the alpha channel properly managed. But a lot of times, if you're delivering a bunch of files to, or you're going to have a bunch of files you want to drag in later, it's easier to save them out as target files. Ping can be used with harder edges and sometimes can be used with soft edges and transparencies, but I've had a lot of issues with it. I know that the switcher seems to be saving these out as pings, but I think it's doing something very specific to them. When I save them out of Photoshop, I get odd results. So I find that Targa is the safest result. You can't, if you're doing motion, just in case you're wondering, you can't save Targa files out through compressor, because it's a compressed version of the target file, not uncompressed, which is what the switcher requires. Hopefully that was a pretty good explanation of how that works, and I owe you a movie, so we'll work on that. All right, next question.
I think one of these days we'll have to have you describe it and have somebody actually put it on screen and do it. I was actually
what I'm working on.
I was trying to follow along in Photoshop and I got lost.
Yeah, I'll work on it. I'll work on that. All right, next question.
It's not quite as simple as you make it out to be, I think. Maybe it is. Jonas Dutal says, is it possible to show a video via the screen share feature? Thinking of showing your mobile phone cam via OBS Ninja as a second device for educators with for educators which systems are locked down.
In other words, controlled by IT, and you don't have any control.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
Right. Go ahead, Colin.
It's conceivable. It's not advisable, but to the extent the system is locked down and you can't get your IT staff to make your system usable for its intended purpose, and that is the approach I would take with them, that they've locked it down to an extent that it is not usable for the purpose for which you were hired, then you could do it that way. There's got to be a way to get your IT staff to make it possible for you to be able to do what you need to do on that machine, because it's not like you're asking to do something outside of your job requirements. So I would go that route.
There's a good this is trouble. I create trouble, just so you know, but there's a good thing in ants where they talk about one stick and breaking it with the grass, hopper. and a whole bunch of sticks or the things coming down. So one teacher complaining about not being able to use their computer is one thing. 500 pushing hard you with PTA and everything else will solve the problem. It's so, the thing that when you're not getting something that you're trying to get towards, sometimes organizing insurrection is a way to kind of solve it. But what you have to do is then train the teachers on how they would use it and why it's important and why they need to have that. But one teacher coming to IT and asking them to do something that's going to open up their thing is not going to get a lot of response. But 10, 20, 50,
you need
100.
to walk into the lounge and with the laptop and say, look, I can't do this, and have everyone else.
But show people how cool it would be. This is possibility. Action occurs when possibility is greater than circumstance. Show all the teachers how cool it would be if they only had it, and how much more you could do if they only had it, and then see how that turns out. It might be a little bit of a campaign, but you just got to be patient and persistent. Mike and Jeffrey and Greg.
Yeah, I being an enterprise worker and even in IT, I know that when they lock it down, everything I could think of to let you make this work probably is turned off. Even if you have an app that will turn into a web browser or web server so that you can look over the web, they may have disabled, if you're on a VPN, disabled access to the local network. Mm-hmm. But there are ways around this. You have to. The USB is going to be locked off. Probably your inputs are going to be locked off. All the stuff in Windows are going to be turned off. So all the clever ideas that we have are probably going to have been blocked already. So sorry.
Go ahead, Jeffrey, and then Greg.
The bigger thing is it might not be the IT department that you have to talk to get it unlocked. This might be way past what an IT decision would be. This might be a school board decision that they lock this down for specific reasons.
Again, but it's just a matter of pressure. Not if one person,
Colin, hold on a second. Not if one person has already done this and accidentally shown a screen that you can't unseen, and then trying to keep this clean. But the whole point is that if it's happened once, that might be the reason why it's locked down, and it's never going to get unlocked until you got to get some pressure on it. But they also have to prove that it's not going to happen again.
And more importantly, you need to make sure that the pressure is applied in the right place. If you're talking to a help desk guy, he's not going to be able to solve your problem. So the first thing to do is ask who you need to talk to to get this unlocked.
Go ahead, Greg, and then Chuck.
A couple possible solutions. If you're in the Mac environment, I can screen share an iPhone or an iPad easily, just within the Zoom domain. You can if they have an HDMI input, you can just bring your laptop and do it from there.
Yep.
I don't know if that the iPhone screen share is available in a PC environment or not.
It's harder on a PC side. Go ahead, Chuck.
I was just going to say I don't have a whole lot of confidence in this solution because we found out Larry, my business partner, his wife, their Chromebooks, they're being required to use them in the classrooms over Wi-Fi for all their Google Meets with all the students. They haven't provided a dongle because the Chromebooks don't have Ethernet, and I can't understand how IT missed that.
The main opportunity to make change. So chaos breeds innovation. And it gives you an opportunity to move. And so what I think is going to happen is there's going to be a lot of chaos this fall, and knowing what you want to get out of that is important. As someone who's inside that system, when everything's moving, because there's going to be a certain amount of pressure that parents apply of being upset that their kids are not getting what they need. And at some point, school systems will go, well, they're going to start the same thing that happened in the spring. We can't use Zoom. Okay, we can use Zoom because, regardless of what the rules are and everything else, because the wheels were coming off the train, and so when the wheels are coming off the train is when you can make audacious requests, but you can't do it by yourself. If you can't gather teachers and parents around your idea, it won't work. You can't be a single person that's frustrated and asking for something. You need to, gather a group of people that are vocal and willing to show up at school board meetings and willing to show up at things and willing to send emails and so on and so forth. But you should not underestimate how much can get done with the proper amount of pressure from enough people, especially in these things. People are still elected, people still have their jobs, and people still want to go home and feel like they're successful, and again, we have to, a lot of times they're accountable for, IT is accountable for not having anything go wrong. They're not accountable for everything going right. So they're gonna be focused on how to not, we deal with this in corporate all the time, and it's just a matter of finding that leverage point and applying a lot of pressure to it. So you just have to, but it's just finding what that looks like. And but sometimes that's the only way to get this kind of stuff done. Anyway, next question.
Tom Rowe says, has anyone trialed the new beta app? Is it, I hate saying that. Is it felt to be helpful for training in a professional environment or gimmicky?
So I spent the weekend with it. Fundamentally, I hate the word. I hate the name so much that I won't use it because I don't want to talk about it. Like I just, it's just such a stupid name, and so the name is so frustrating that I won't talk about it in public. I won't do it because I just I don't want to deal with the name. They should change the name to something else because it's stupid. I have played with it. The problem is that it doesn't solve what I need, which is I just need to switch between the slides and me. There's no way to do that, at least that I can find. It all is built around I'm going to sit over top of my slides, which is not something that I want to do. And so I can't figure out how to get it to do the one thing that I need. So I feel like there's probably some room for yet another app to solve this. Go ahead, Colin.
It's a gimmicky low-end video switch with fixed shots that you can reproduce in a much more flexible way with any of Cam Twist, XSplit, OBS, Wirecast. It's not something you want to get anywhere near. Well, and a buddy of mine who's into VC had this comment. I think I may have mentioned this before. If you speak the name of your company in a loud bar and I can't understand it, then you've chosen the wrong company name.
Yeah, and I do think that a simplified, small edited media tool for going into Zoom or Skype or Meet or whatever could be very popular, but this one doesn't hit the mark because it's too complex. It actually is too many things. Like you go into the thing and there's all these little settings and all these little bits and pieces that I don't need, and I'm dealing with on a day-to-day basis for shows. I'm still putting external switchers in, doing all kinds of other things because I just want to do very simple things that no app does well, where it isn't a bunch of complex things. You have a bunch of someone who's administering a meet. They just need to be able to put up a slide. They need to play some music. They want to play a video out. They want to do these simple things. And everyone keeps on building something that they don't need to just do these certain things. It's again, basic ball handling that's not being handled. We're just doing trick plays constantly. And putting yourself over your slides is a horrible idea. Like it actually makes me upset looking at it. When I see it. Anyway, Jeffrey.
With that said, the only problem that I've run into with the app is that if you start playing any type of video, it's going to frame really horribly. And of course, audio is always an issue. This is for Mac only at this point in time. I don't know if they'll make a Windows version. So you'll have to deal with the audio issues going into Zoom. Other than that, it's working okay.
Yeah, it's not, I don't see, I could be wrong, but I think between the name and the feature set, unless they adjust both of those, they're probably not going to go anywhere. Next question.
I like the comment about speaking a name in a crowded, loud bar.
Yeah.
So we have two questions, both from Tanya, and they're both kind of about Zoom lighting. How about if I read the first one and then the second one, and then we deal with it? Tanya is lighting for Zoom calls. She has glare on her eyeglasses. Is there something you can do to minimize or avoid glare in your eyeglasses? And then also lighting for Zoom calls, troubleshooting shadows, trying to avoid a shadow from a ring light. I put my ring light on a tripod behind my laptop camera, which gave great light, but created a shadow even if I turned it on to the lowest setting, and had an overhead light as well as at the same time. So just some basic lighting tips for Zoom.
Phil and then Mickey.
So as far as the glare on
on the glasses thing, I've been struggling with that a lot. One of the main things is you got to figure out where the glare is coming from. Is it either a light or is it your laptop screen? And if it's your laptop screen, one of the things that I've been doing, if you see here, like that's the wrong way to do it, right? And if I do this, so I'm in night mode on the Mac, which flips everything to a black background, and it makes there basically be no reflection. It's a small tip, but try to avoid that.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I mean glasses here as well, but if she mentions sorry, is it the she? I assume Tanya, yeah. She mentions that the light is right behind the camera. If she lifts it up, then the angle of the reflection won't be directly like back to the camera itself. Like me, I move my light up, and now you see the glare only if I tilt my head up.
And you'll notice that. Go ahead.
And yeah, she mentioned as well the shadow. I assume because the light is right by the camera, the shadow would be right behind her. So if she moves the light up, the shadow will be below to the floor instead of right behind.
And some of that is also distance to the wall. So I've got 4 feet behind me, which means that nothing's going to hit it, as far as my shadow goes. The other thing to remember is exactly what Mickey's talking about is angle of incidence equals angle of reflection. So as it goes down, my camera is always set above my eyes. So my camera is up at about a 10-degree turn from my eyes right now. Then I have lights that are up at about a 45-degree. Now that means that the camera, when your camera is below your eyes, it means it's going to hit your glasses and reflect upward. If your camera is above your eyes, it's going to hit your glasses and will go downward. So what it means is you're going to get, if you can see that I can turn up to here before you see it. Like I can sit pretty straight up with my glasses without any reflection at all because the camera's high above, which means it's hitting my glasses and then bouncing down, not up into what the lights are, not up to the lights. So the camera being above the eye line is one piece of it. Then the lights being at a 45-degree. And usually what I do is I try to move the lights up until you just see that when I'm looking up like this, I want to see a kind of a crescent on the top of the pupil or on top of the iris. That's like the angle I'm shooting for to get that. And it'll also have the other effect of cutting your chin out a little bit. And some people like the up light. I don't. So I like cutting the face out a little bit. And so having that up angle also tend to help that as well. But it'll help the reflection and with your chin separation. Go ahead, Stuart.
Solution that might come from motorsport, and I actually used to wear glasses myself, so I know first thing is to clean the glasses. If you've got any oil from your skin on them, it magnifies the reflections, it makes them bigger. But there's also a product called Rain-X, which is in 2 forms. One's for anti-fogging and one's for putting on the outside of a car's windshield for getting rid of water droplets and glare and what have you. Has anyone tried cleaning their glasses with that and seeing if it reduces the reflections? Because that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to reduce glare coming through a windscreen.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
To answer that question, it doesn't work on all sets of glasses. These lenses right here, you can't put the Rain-X on because they say that it will hurt the lenses.
A lot of coating issues as well.
Yeah.
Next question.
Kyle Hammond from Chicago says, will the Steve Bayes Power Hour, I added the word power, and other second hours be back once school starts?
Yeah, well, most likely. I'm not sure exactly when or where we put them, but we're definitely going to be bringing back second hours, those specialty hours, whether it's Unreal or Steve Bayes. And but right now we want to focus on educators to see what we can do as far as answering those questions and trying to move them forward. So I'm not going to give an exact date, but they're definitely coming back. It's just a matter of where and when. Next question.
So Alex, so we're basically done with questions that are not audio related. There's a lot of audio questions, so we're just gonna.
Well, we've got a couple. Well, you've got a couple more, right?
We've got a couple more. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you have general questions, and if you have more general questions, then go ahead and add them.
Okay, I'm just looking at the ones
Phil,
that are
just keep looking through those to make sure that they're not.
Right.
That they're general questions.
I figured this Mukana one wasn't really an audio. Well,
right.
You can decide.
Yep. But anyway, otherwise we'll just blend in. If there's not any more general questions, we'll go in. We've got a lot of questions, so we don't want to fall behind. Go ahead.
Yep. So Jonas says, can Alex explain how he streams the audio into Mukana?
Now, this is the advantage of asking questions during our mic check. So that question popped up early. I saw it and I got a screen grab. So I can show you how to do it. So this is the, I'll show you the little pipeline here that I have. And I would recommend getting in early and putting questions in early, because I'm going to start looking at these questions in that time and try to figure out things that I can grab to answer them better. Oh, can someone make me a co-host right now?
If you behave.
Oh, thank you.
I think you already are.
Oh, okay. I don't know why I didn't. Okay. Yeah, it was all right. So this is my pipeline here. It's more complicated than it needs to be. So Zoom is the output here. This channel forces it to mono because sometimes I forget when I reset Zoom, it'll automatically set some kind of like input as well as it, and it pushes it all to one channel. And so just in case I forget to turn it off, I have it just go make it mono. It was on the way through. The volume I thought I needed to make higher, but everyone thought it was too loud, so I brought it back down so that volume's there just so I can turn it up and down. And so anyway, that's why the volume's there. And then these are just, I was just comparing the meters. So there's not, you could literally do the Zoom to on air to, I would put a meter in of some kind. The advantage of the meter is it just tells me roughly where I'm hitting in that process. And then I go out to the speakers, which I don't need to do either. This on air, I can't show you that because it's got it's got all my IP numbers in it. But basically this broadcast is just a node inside of Audio Hijack. This is Audio Hijack, by the way. And so it has an IP to Shoutcast, and Shoutcast, I set up an account in Shoutcast. It gives me a URL. I put the URL and the stream key into this broadcast node, and it sends it to Shoutcast, and Shoutcast gives me a URL where I can put it into Mukana. So that's, I think it took Chris about 4 hours to put it into Mukana. And then
what's the audio bit rate on that then?
I think I set it to 128, because why not? But anyway, so that's how I'm piping that out. And again, that chain is probably more complicated than it needs to be, but it's kind of amazing. I have to admit that every time I do it, I'm like, I can't believe I'm just doing this in a little Audio Hijack and just streaming out to the world. Go ahead, Mickey.
Question. I noticed both meters were going to the broadcast node. Does that mean 2 copies of the audio are going to broadcast, thus being summed?
I'll have to look at that. I don't know.
You could test it by.
I think that they just pass through. I don't think that they're. Yeah, I'll have to look at it. Let's see.
You could also put those meters in series and not in parallel.
You can just make a branch out of that.
Here, you guys will have to tell me whether it changes here.
Yeah, I'm not monitoring the stream, so.
But that could be also why it was. So the folks in the chat should tell me whether it suddenly got lower. So if you're in the chat in the next couple seconds, you should be able to tell me that it got lower or not. I don't see anybody.
It didn't.
It didn't. So
No.
maybe it didn't do anything there. So interesting.
Someone just.
Oh, it's now
mentioned it
lower.
went
So
lower.
Rachel Ann says that it's now lower. So now what I'll do is I'll turn this off and set it to 100.
Yeah, after I said it didn't, it actually lowered.
Yeah.
But you said it with such conviction, we completely believed you.
Well, so so now it should be brighter. So I should let's see if it let me know if it's better now than what it was before, or it should
brighter.
Well, fuller, louder. It should be louder, not brighter. It's the audio version of louder, brighter. So is it? So I guess I'm waiting for the folks that are in the chat to let us know whether it's
back to the original level.
Brighter. It might actually be a touch lower than the original level, because
I think there's more audio delay turning on and off the meters through Mukana than there is watching Mickey's meter.
Well, yeah, there's definitely a stream. It's like 7 or 8 seconds going back. Okay, well, let us know if you're in the chat.
If there is a difference, I'm not hearing it, and I was listening to it as you went. So,
well, we now have a new chain, and it seems to be working. So we'll just keep it there. Anyway, next question.
Okay, next question is John Well, and he says ATEM Mini versus Mini Pro. If I'm not primarily interested in live streaming, but mostly interested in recording for later upload, are there still other benefits to going with the Pro?
The multi-view. The multi-view is the big thing. Being able to see what you're actually cutting. And then if I was going to record for future, I would look at the ISO, because that seems like what you would want is to record a bunch of ISO. If you're recording for future upload, the thing you want is ISO. That's what it's built for. So, but multi-view is the big thing that's missing in the Mini. I think the Mini is still a great solution if you're using it as a presentation tool. So if you're using the Mini as a presentation tool, it's great. If you're using if you want to stream out of it, or you're actually using it for a show for somebody else, I would use the Pro. Go ahead, Bill, and then Mickey.
I just wanted to note that if you're using the ISO, I believe it does not record ISO feeds into your Zoom. It's only going to record ISOs of cameras you have in your location. So it's going to record ISOs of what's hooked up to the mixer, not break people out of your chats and ISO them.
No, you would still need to. I think that what I was looking at was just that you want to record something for future use. What I do think that could be interesting is a bunch of Mac Minis that are connected via HDMI to the ATEM. So you could theoretically record 4 ISOs, well, let's say 3 in the grid in one ATEM Mini. Could be, and it could record all those ISOs. So we were talking about lots of recorders, and theoretically the ATEM Mini could do that for you. It's not going to connect to Zoom, but it could theoretically grab 3, let's say, Mac Mini outputs from there. Mickey, and then Chuck.
Yeah, just in addition to the multi-view, the compatibility with that new remote streaming box, I forgot what they call it, is, I think, like a pretty powerful thing.
Yeah, if it works. All right, Chuck.
Fair enough.
No, that's actually the use I just pitched to someone last night. Is you could run your gallery view into input 4, never switch to it, but still record that as an ISO for when you're cutting your show after the fact.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting way. If you had 3 people that were talking, or 4 people that you just want all ISOs and nothing else, you could do a 4-up with the ATEM. I think it works in my head. That would be a interesting way to solve that issue. You get 2 ATEM ISOs, and now you've got theoretically 8 records that you'd have to line up a little bit later. But you could just do these as multi-records. It's not actually a bad idea. To tie those together to get a relatively inexpensive and easy to use multi-record. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, for someone who's just trying to totally go on the cheap, the $295 ATEM Mini, if you don't want to jump up for the multi-view, there is a monitor that a lot of people have been talking about that's in like the $500 range that actually has loop through. So you can feed your HDMI ins and then get them back out to feed them into the switcher. And now you have the benefit of a 15-inch monitor with the quad split. So if you're on the fence, kind of look at that and maybe look.
Of course, for less more, you spend $300 for it, and then you only have for $400. You could just have the.
But then you need a monitor too, and what are you going to?
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. But you have a lot of. There's a lot of other display. There's a lot of other things in the display for the multi-view from the Pro as well.
Yeah, you get audio level meters, and you can see your media pool. So,
but it is good in between. Yeah, Mickey.
Yeah, would a monitor like that resync the feeds in terms of genlock?
Not sure if it's doing any processing or if it's just passing straight through. I haven't gotten one yet. It's just I've seen a lot of people on the forums grab this thing, and I want to get one myself. They look pretty cool.
Next question.
John Broman says, I sometimes have to take a phone call while I'm watching. If I've asked a question,
you can just mute. We need to set up a filter where it says mute when watching office hours. Like but at least you can do not disturb. I mean, this is office hours after all.
If I've asked a question, as I did yesterday, I will miss the answer. Is there any way to find the answer either in Mukana or YouTube without having to listen to a long stretch of the recording? There is, and I have it right here.
Jeffrey does an amazing job of this already. So Jeffrey does these chapters, and all you have to do is click on the little, if you see the question there, all you have to do is click on the time and it will take you.
Mickey. There you go.
It'll
So
take
what was
you
your
right to that time.
Here you go. Yeah.
So you just take it. It's in a.
And on the Discord, you have the questions and the links posted in the chat.
Yeah,
exactly.
But there you go. That's every question there is.
That's crazy.
A summary.
That's
yeah,
great.
And Jeffrey's kind enough to work on that every day, and so we have that summary for all of them. So if
the only problem being second hour, I don't normally do that.
Right. So, but first hour, you're getting all of those things there. So it's anyway, it's definitely a great service. So thank you, Jeffrey, for working on that. He suggested it. I was like, it does that? And he's like, oh yeah, it does that. I was like, okay, let's do that. I don't even know.
Where do you find that?
It's on YouTube. You just go to the Alex Lindsay channel. But we're gonna move the channel.
I did a video on how to not only do hashtags but also channel URLs and chapter markers. I got that in Discord. You can look for it.
Yeah, it's great. Next question.
Seth from actually, I don't know where you're from, Seth. Should I purchase a Blackmagic Design ATEM Mini HDMI live stream switcher to become more familiar with our new virtual world? Will it help me present in a WebEx Zoom environment?
It will. I don't know if WebEx can see it. So WebEx will be a challenge to get it in. What you'll have to do is use MmmHmm. Oh, it might work. It might work. I had trouble getting WebEx to see my Mini. It may work now. I think that there was an update that might have it pop up. It doesn't show up as a webcam for everything. I know that the web presenter always does. But the web presenter shows up as a webcam for absolutely everything. The Mini, not as perfect in that area. But I'll test it with WebEx. I have a Pro over here that I can test with it, maybe even later today. So I had to plug it in for some other stuff anyway. So anyway, we'll try to get back to you on that. But it is if you're doing presentations and you're doing meetings and you want to show stuff, I think that the Mini and the Mini Pro, but the Mini especially for presentations is a ninja tool. It's amazing to put. I've been working with companies that people want to do high-end presentations that are moving millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars. And they're like, how do I up my game? Because I can no longer meet with the client. And the first thing that I say is get a Mini. Get a Mini. Now you have your PowerPoint or keynote presentation. You've got a video of yourself. Maybe you have a close-up camera if you're talking about a product. And now you're able to just tap between those in a piece of hardware. You can plug it into any of the computers that you have. You don't have to figure out how to make that work. You can definitely do it in software. You can do it in OBS. You can do it in MmmHmm. You can do it in a lot of other tools. But having that little piece of hardware there that you can just tap on while you're working is the simplest way to really up your game as far as presentation goes. Hasmukh and then Colin.
To the question, absolutely. Just do it. Next question.
All right, Colin.
Okay, I completely disagree with Hasmukh and Alex.
There you go.
Don't just do it. You can do these things in software, so try software first. If software doesn't meet your requirements, then go invest in the hardware.
I would just skip to the hardware. All right,
I know that.
Next question.
That's why I started with I disagree.
Yeah, exactly.
A. Mitchells says, now that the second hour and sometimes third and fourth hours, as well as Saturdays, are going to YouTube, will the earlier recordings be available there soon too?
I'm not going to promise anything about the early recordings. It has very little to do with. The problem is that I really feel like there were things that we said that we weren't really planning to put out there, and so I really feel like I would have to go back and look at them, and I'm not ready to do that. I don't have the time.
Commitment of time.
Yeah, and it's not something I'm ready to. I know people have offered to look at it for me, but it's something that I would worry about, and it would make me very uncomfortable. So it's something that I would need to do myself, and
we
so
found
because
your
of that.
kryptonite.
Yeah. I need to be in I'm in different show modes, but if you haven't noticed on Sundays, I'm in a different show mode when I'm not on YouTube. So I'm not going to promise anything from the back catalog. Go ahead, Jeffrey, and then Hasmukh.
I think the better thing would just be, hey, have them just say, we want to see this again, and then just reschedule it and do it that way.
Yeah. We'll figure that. Yeah, I'd rather do it again than put up the old ones. I may get to a point where we go through them and we put up little highlights or something like that from those older ones. But and historically they're useful to have around because you get to see where it started. But I don't,
I have a question. How much data do you have stored, and where are you storing it?
Not very well. It's on an SSD. There's like, it's like 200 gigs on an SSD of older stuff. So
That's it?
yeah,
I would think it would be a lot more than that.
it doesn't, the files aren't that big from Zoom. I don't record them locally. I record them to the cloud. They're small. Hosmuk?
I find that even watching the earlier shows on YouTube, it kind of loses the punch. You just kind of lose the currency. So it's very useful to stay current with. I don't find it very beneficial going back.
I'm not. I will admit that fundamentally, I'm not a going back kind of person. So I usually don't like what I did yesterday. So I'm usually like, just throw it overboard. Like I'm not interested in. I'm very unsentimental. I don't look at old stuff, and I just kind of keep moving forward. As kind of, I don't look back very much. Mickey?
Speaking about looking at old stuff, I spent the day today. I was talking to Fenwick last night, I guess your time, and I told him that I was watching the days that I missed, and yeah, I would say like this needs to be a podcast. I'd like to like immediately have it on my phone and
yeah. So
yeah.
I'm getting the streaming working was part of it, but I'm going to start. I am much more interested in turning this into a podcast than going into old records. So I'm trying to get that done no later than the end of the month, but it's every weekend that I tried. We had 2 massive launches, last week and this week, that were significant, and so are significant, and so we're trying to swallow this huge amount of work that we brought in. And so I'm once I get through that, I'll have a little bit more, and once we've hired all the staff that's required to do it, I'll have a little bit more brain power. Go ahead, Colin.
I just want to point this out because both Hasmukh and Alex both dismissed the value of historical content, and it is entirely dependent on the content itself. Here
Sure.
we're discussing current technologies and technologies that are changing on a weekly basis, so historical content is less useful. In sports, historical content, a back catalog is extremely valuable. In political news, not valuable in the slightest. So it's all about the content that you're dealing with.
Well, and for me, for sports, I'm like, it's NFL films is valuable, but for me, pretty much everything else is like, once the game is over, I don't need to see it.
Well,
again.
Sure, but I mean, the point is, it's content specific. How the relative value of historical content.
No, I'm not. I wasn't
that's
talking about.
understood.
I'm talking about my content. I'm not talking about anybody else's content.
No,
that
it
I
was
don't-
just the way with which it was dismissed that I wanted to suggest that you consider for your own content how valuable the historical record is for you.
Yeah, Zach.
Yeah, I have to second what Colin says. I offer downloads from my website with the conference recording, and people purchase recordings from 20 years ago, from 17 years ago. They go through it, they see, so if they have a passion for these things, it's all about the content,
Yeah. I still watch Connections. It's 40 years old, still good. So anyway, and Good Eats, the old ones, not the really old ones. The first couple seasons were in Good Eats were, but once you got to season 4 or 5, it's pretty good. All right, next question.
Robert Baker says, is a 1080p Canon C100 Mark II still a viable camera in 2020?
It's good for a webcam. Mickey?
It depends what he would use it for. I mean, B-roll, why not? For YouTube videos, why not? I mean, like if it's just yourself shooting, I mean, you're shooting yourself or whatever. If it's not like really critical, if it's not, if it say won't be blown up on a big screen, then why not?
Yeah, I mean, most delivery on the web is still 1080p, so you still have it still has a lot of use. I have to admit that I personally do not like the interface on most of the Canon cameras. I find them to be extremely frustrating. And I've used the 100. I've rented it overseas a lot because it was really easy to rent in the price range that I had for the shows that I had. So I got to use it and mostly swear at it while I was using it because it's just the weirdest. I don't know I don't know who thought that how they set those buttons up made sense. Jeffrey and then Bill.
Send it to me and I'll use it.
Oh.
But seriously, it's great for things like picture in picture. So if you're doing 4K videos, streaming videos or whatever, and you have like a picture in picture, like a cooking show or something like that, you'd have it focused on a certain area down in the corner. It works perfect for stuff like that. But yeah, I'd use 1080p camera, and just like Alex said, for streaming, you don't want to go over 1080p too much because then you run into way too many problems.
Yep. Go ahead, Bill, real quick, and then Stuart. 15 seconds each. We're going to speed up a little bit.
I just argue that learning to shoot is a little bit like learning to play the piano. The keyboard you're sitting at when you're learning to play doesn't really matter very much. What matters is that you keep playing every day.
Yep. Go ahead, Stuart.
C100 is a POS. I'm going to contrary opinion there. To make anything decent out of it, you need a Ninja attached to it because its onboard recording is poor.
He had to reach for what word to use there. All right. Next question.
Nick Walker says, anyone tried Hover.live for SuperSource for use in Zoom and ATEM Mini? I've signed up for beta, but not received an invite yet. Hover.live.
I just did the same thing. I don't know how new this is. We'll see.
What is it? What does it do?
It looks like they're doing graphic overlays and doing asset management online. It's not really clear what they're doing beyond that, whether you're routing things through WebRTC or what. We'll see.
Yep.
Weird. So the answer is no. Nobody's tried it.
Next question.
Philip Aller says, what would you recommend for adding more than 8-frame audio delay in an ATEM Mini? Don't have the option of going directly into the camera.
Why? I guess the question I have is, what is going on that you have 8 frames of? 8 frames is a lot. That's 240 milliseconds. I would definitely look at what's going on in the pipeline there, Mickey.
Yeah, interesting that you say that, Alex, because I had to stream out some playback material last Sunday, and I measured the delay. I was going in ATEM, the playback was going into the ATEM was going into the transmission computer, and audio was running through a MixPre 3. And yeah, it came out to 8 frames delay when I measured it. So I had to dial in 8 frames out of the MixPre for it to line up. But in terms of adding the delay, if Philip is on a Mac, then I believe Audio Hijack can do that.
Oh, Audio Hijack. Yep, you can do that. And OBS and Wirecast all have their own delays built in as well. Jason.
Yeah. Also, the Behringer, the thing that I sent to
the Shark.
Yeah, thank you. The Behringer Shark will also do this. It's a $100 box. You just have to be really careful because it's not the greatest preamp in the world.
Next question.
Our own Victor from Ocean Shores, Australia says, will you be looking at doing an office hours geared more globally for those who are in different time zones?
Look at this room.
No, in a perfect world, if I didn't have a day job, I'd probably do the exact same set of office hours in the afternoon as well. So I would do 6 to 9, 6 to 9, and do it and spread it out 12 hours apart. But I would have to not have a day job to do that. So, which means we have to get bigger so that I can afford it. I don't know. When there's 2,000 or 3,000 people showing up every morning, it's probably time for us to subdivide into the morning and in the evening. So that's probably so if you're looking for impetus to grow, we just need to get bigger. I can't right now. If I subdivide the number of people in the current event, it won't work. So we need the minimum is to split it. We need to be about 700 concurrent between YouTube and here to have any chance of making the split work and have the conversation still be viable, in my opinion. So we're still a ways away. And so when we're trying to grow it, that's me. I have a lot of ideas of what we can do and how we can grow it, but they're based on the size, not time. It needs to be, so us sharing it and growing it and so on and so forth will give me what I need to subdivide. But right now it would cut the event in half and it wouldn't work. Victor and then Greg and then Stuart pretty quickly though.
Yeah, my point wasn't that we're not global now. We obviously are in the panel and elsewhere, but wouldn't it be nice for our brothers and sisters to be able to listen at a more reasonable time, even once a month?
Yeah. And yeah, I agree. It's maybe on the weekends we'll look at a weekend sessions that are in the evening. It also I admit for me, my day is early morning. I do this, and then I work until about 7 or 8 in the evening, and then I hang out with my kids and I go to bed. And it's like, and so thinking about the evening, I have to cut into something in the evening that is there. And right now it's been a little intense. So I protect this morning viciously with everything around me. I just tell people I'm not available. But it's hard to protect more spaces in my current schedule because right now I'm working 7 days a week. Craig?
Yeah, and on the flip side of that, I just wanted to say that you guys on the West Coast getting up at 6 o'clock and starting this thing at 6 o'clock, you're kind of at the beginning of the international date line here. Only Northern Marianas and Hawaii are ahead of you. So by the fact that you're doing that, you're really giving a large amount of people the opportunity to be able to get it sometime before they're asleep.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say.
And for me, it was mostly that I have a work day, so I was like, it has to all live in before the work day. And at first I thought I'd just do it till 8, and then I'll get away from going to 9. But I have to. I do have limits on that process. Next question.
Jay Scott says, I have a client that's looking for a way to use.
Sorry, Stuart. I left Stuart out. What were you gonna say, Stuart? You're in Australia. Represent.
Yeah, it's 12:53 here in the morning. The only people who would be worse affected by the time zone would be those people in New Zealand, because they're about 3 hours ahead of the west coast of Australia. Oh, sorry, east coast of Australia. Grant and Phil and Mickey are actually a couple of hours behind us, so they're less affected. It's not such a big deal to do it at this time of day, because it's like at the end of the day, you've relaxed, you've had dinner, you sit down, listen to a group of polymaths talk about tech, which is always good, and just enjoy it. It's a nice way to end the day rather than just be a nice way to begin the day.
Yeah, and I do. I mean, I have a dream that someday we could do this 24/7, not just me, but that you could be talking about this stuff all the time, and just have the things that you're interested in that you could come and check out. But we'd have to grow it a lot to get there. Go ahead, Hosmuk.
Please don't change it. 4 o'clock is a perfect time for me.
Very good. All right. Next question.
I think for anybody who's been here a lot, they've figured out how to make it work in their life. Jay Scott says, I have a client that's looking for a way to use multiple cameras in a warehouse to take photos of equipment. The cameras need to be stationary and simple to use for the workers. They simply need to press a button, take a photo, and then the photos need to be sent to a computer or a tablet. Any suggestions?
Jason, and then Stuart, and then Chuck, and then Colin.
I'm going to steal Colin's thunder. This is far and away the best use case for a Raspberry Pi that I've seen, in the last week or two. As far as, exactly which one, I couldn't tell you, but yeah, this is just perfect.
Go ahead, Stuart, and then Chuck, and then Colin. 15 seconds each.
As a PC person, I hate that I'm going to say this. Use an iPhone.
Okay. Chuck?
I would think some cheap photo booth software might be an easy, quick setup for this, either on an iPad or even just with a computer with an old DSLR connected to it. Most of the photo booth software will automatically categorize or catalog for you, and that might be a solution.
Go ahead, Colin.
For something like this, presumably, I mean, it's not a factory floor, but you still need a hardened solution. So having an iPhone there seems risky. Having any, standard body camera there seems risky. So I would go with Jason's suggestion here and rig up something with an iPad with a Raspberry Pi and give it a button and make sure that it just delivers the photo to whatever NAS or storage solution you want for the thing. Inspection cameras like this are a pretty common thing in industry. So and so that you can get all sorts of very small cameras, different kinds of borescopes and so on. But you probably don't want to put this on a tripod either. You want to mount this to something quite a bit more sturdy.
Yep, Courtney, real quick, and then we're gonna move on. Sorry, guys, we're gonna move on because we're gonna.
I may be missing something with this down. Sounds like just a regular surveillance cam setup, and most surveillance cam packages that you can get at Costco or any of the.
Well, you need to be able to activate it. I think is to be able to say, okay, I want to take a picture of this. I want to take a picture of this. I want to take a picture of this. You know, it's. I think.
Yeah, they all have now. Web-based, access.
Yeah, but I think that what you need is something that someone can just push a button and in a production environment, you need to have someone just be able to push a button and say that's what I want, rather than having to go up to the web and grab onto something or whatever. Otherwise it just won't get done. Next question, Chris. We're going to move really fast. So if I come to you, I'm going to come to you. You got to move. You got to answer it quickly.
The name for the product, by the way, is the Raspberry Pi Pad. Attila says, I don't really have a good question, but I was curious if anyone wants to share what keyboard they like. I'm mounting my Matthias Mini Tactile Pro at the moment, the ugliest and best keyboard ever made.
Greg and then Colin, like 10 seconds max. No,
I'm partial to Steinway's myself.
Okay, Colin, that's about the right.
I disagree with here. I think the best keyboard ever made is an IBM Model M. It's heavy duty, and you can beat a man to death with it.
All right, and I still like my little chiclet Mac one. Anyway, next question.
Jeffrey Power says Sony updated their CI cloud services today, adding CI Catalog. Anyone use it, and what are your thoughts?
No,
we don't use it. All right, next question. Sorry.
Jeff says, hi, Alex. At Macworld 1999, I asked you this question regarding getting into the VFX industry, specialize or generalize. What is your answer today for live event production? Specialize or generalize?
Generalize. I mean, you got to know the whole pipeline. That's why we're doing this conversation, while we cover all these different things and everything else. I think that, if you just know one piece, it's really hard, because you can do a lot of these events as a general practitioner in a way that would be hard. So I would still say generalize. I probably said generalize back then as well, but I don't think I've changed that story. I don't believe, you have to correct me, but I don't think I said specialize, because I've never been a big person for specialized. I think that holistically you have to understand how the entire pipeline works to be good at your specialty. So that a well-rounded understanding of the process makes you better at the individual processes. Go ahead, Chris.
I tell every editor I know that once a year they should shoot a story, and every shooter that I know that once a year they should edit a story.
Nothing like having shooters that have edited, because they shoot so much better footage, because they give you handles. Anyway, go ahead, Mickey, real quick.
Yeah, if I could just quickly add, I would suggest first generalize, then you'll know what you want to specialize on later.
And then keep generalizing.
At least you will have the base of everything before.
Right. And the use of this conversation is to keep on doing your specialty, but keep on talking to people who are doing a little bit of everything, and keep on cross-pollinating where you can on here, on Discord. But you get into that only thing you think about is audio or video or streaming. And, there are solutions that require all of those, and you want all of those things in your head at the same time. Next question.
James Babbitt says, using Zoom to switch between multiple iPhones and LTE iPads and then stream the live event to YouTube. Is there a better hardware and software solution to produce the show other than just using Zoom? There's no Wi-Fi available at the event.
Go ahead, Colin, and then Jason, and then Mickey, real quick.
James, you sir, are courting disaster. I can't imagine a more risky setup than LTE for something like that.
Go ahead, Jason, and then Mickey.
Yeah, I'll just answer the last part of that. Just get Lightning to Ethernet. It's a real thing and it works.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I believe Teradek released a product recently that would help you do this. Maybe check it out.
Yeah, with Wi-Fi, I would be tempted to say something like Switcher Studio, but without Wi-Fi, it'd be harder. Next question.
Brent Rusk says, for what circumstances would you recommend an Elemental over a service like Restream.io or Streamlab if you're beginning to handle multicasting as part of client work?
Well, the Elemental, if you get a base Elemental, if you get a link, then you just have to understand AWS. I mean, Restream's easier. There's a bunch of, I'm on the tail end of Restream quite a bit recently, and it's a little bit of a cluster. from a real professional perspective of what it does and how it works. And so, having more control over it is going to give you more scalability. So understanding how it actually works and building actual outputs out of AWS is going to give you more control and higher quality than Restream. And so I think that you'll grow into it. Otherwise, you'll be limited to what now. Restream is turnkey and it's easier. So if you just want to get something working, go ahead and turn it on. But if you actually want to grow into a professional service, it doesn't hurt you to start in doing something simple in AWS and then keep on adding to it. You're going to end up with a lot more scalability, and you'll get that client that asks you to do something bigger. But we're in the process right now of one of our systems where we're being brought in to. We're probably going to remove Restream from everything and replace it with our solutions, just because we want more control and higher quality. Jason, then Lucas, and then Jeffrey, real quick.
Realstream is a cluster, but it is my favorite because it is a foolproof cluster. If you want to look professional, then use the Elemental. That's it.
Go ahead, Lucas.
Yeah, just if you don't like a Restream to have API access to your accounts, like starting your stream when you don't want it, then you should probably not use Restream, I think.
I hate the idea of it having to start the stream. Drives me absolutely, like, I just want to do RTMP. RTMP, and which you can do in Restream as well. You can just set Restream up to just do an RTMP connection, and then you can control it. But the whole, like, I'm going to start as soon as I turn it on, just terrifies me. Jeffrey?
It's good to have both in your pocket if you can, but as Alex has talked about before, you can always turn off the AWS instance and save yourself some money.
VK, by the way, the only way to get to VK in Russia is Restream. All right, just in case you're wondering, that'd be one argument for it. If you ever need to stream to the Facebook version, Facebook in Russia, you need Restream to do that. All right, next question.
Jeff Francis says, recommendation for a battery-powered rechargeable small display with HDMI or SDI input for focusing, framing, POV cameras.
If you're not looking for perfectly accurate color, the Liliputs all do that as well. There's a lot of them that have battery solutions. They're inexpensive. They're not going to record like a camera assist or whatever, but they're great little monitors that you don't feel too bad when you crush them. Not that I've ever had that happen, but I don't know, I bought 20 or 30 of the over some period of time with those. They're great little monitors. Bill, and then Mickey, real quick.
Specifically for the focusing and framing issue, make sure that the monitor does 1-to-1 pixel mapping, because some of them don't, and you get blow-ups and softness that's not necessary.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, for just framing and focusing, yeah, Lilliput is great. Marshall also has good options. What I typically bring on sets is this, which is the small HD focus OLED 5-inch. The 5-inch runs for I think $200 or $300 US dollars, and then they also have a version that is 7 inches. So yeah, and excellent screen. It's an OLED screen.
Jason, real quick, and we're running a little heavy because we just got behind on the questions. Apologize. Go ahead, next question.
And if you want a cheap one, Feel World is a Chinese company that makes a respectable product, and it's very inexpensive.
Next question.
Martin Reutman says, can Alex make a nice diagram showing how to put the lights, cameras, and maybe a boom mic in order to not get light reflections?
15 seconds, Alex.
I'll work on it. Yeah, exactly. I don't know if
think
I can do
we need a
nice one,
section in what's the thing called? The Discord, where people request you to produce video tutorials.
What we need from Alex. I need a list of them.
We can call it homework for Alex. It'll be great.
Yeah, exactly. So I owe a lower third, and I owe a countdown clock right now. So I think that's the ones that are on my list.
And a pitch deck that explains the optimal use of pitch decks.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we have to keep. So we'll create a section of Alex to-dos. Anyway, all right.
For when you're bored.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Copious free time. Go ahead, real quick. Keep going.
Okay. So Jonas here. Next question. And this I think refers back to the timestamps inside of YouTube. But couldn't Mukana generate these markers on its own?
Yes, it could. All right. Next question.
All right. George says, is there an online resource of previous recommendations for basic streaming setups, hardware, software, mic, camera, lighting, interfaces, etc.?
I don't know if we've I don't know if we put those up as like specific drawings. We just keep talking about them. So it's probably on another list of things that we need to do in the
Alex
content.
homework.
Yeah, content, Alex homework, or us homework. We'll figure out who does it. But yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey, real quick, 10 or 15 seconds.
It changes between different people. I've done videos like that several times, and they've always, every year it changes just a little bit different. So just check YouTube.
Good business to be in, editing videos.
Next question.
Tim McKean says, has anyone on the panel had experience with the Padcaster kit for streaming from an iPad?
Padcaster kit. Is that with the iOgrapher Padcaster?
That's the iPad thing. I've done it. I've used it at NAB. They have some really cool features. They actually have a setup where you can actually put in an EF lens to focus from far away. But small studios use them from time to time, and you might see them at some conference next time we go to conferences.
Yeah, there's also iOgrapher also makes ones that are a little less expensive that you can grab onto. But yeah, I haven't used this one, but it looks pretty cool. But I haven't seen it in the wild. Jeffrey, you're looking at using those as just kind of portable classroom captures.
Me? No,
No, I was asking Jeff. Because Jeff, did you ask that question? Jeff Francis?
No, I did not. That's Tim McKean.
Oh, Tim. Sorry. I don't know why I thought it was Jeff. Anyway, sorry, Tim.
I was a couple back.
I transposed you. Anyway, next question.
Hasmuk, hey Hasmuk, says, in a Zoom meeting, class, talent, and editor operating host computer need to view a screen as an attendee, grid, spotlight, speaker. Host computer operator also needs to audio monitor the call. Setup is that talent is hooked to the host computer for mic and audio through IEMs.
Okay, go ahead, Mickey. Go ahead, Mickey.
Set up a separate machine to view what the actual program out is.
Yeah, I think so. Go ahead, Hasmuk.
I'll probably need two computers so that the talent can face the one, and as a host operator, I have another one. So it's all in all, it'll be 3 computers for the session.
You can use your phone, Hasmuk. You know, use phones.
Yeah. Got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you'll need 3. Next question.
Audio time.
All right, it's audio time. Let's move to audio. Sorry for running a little over there. We got a little behind on that, and I wanted to go ahead and finish them. So now we're switching to audio questions. So
the first one.
Switch over. Go ahead.
Roger Miles says, Zoom has recently updated the iPad client to disable iOS screen recorder from recording audio. Does anyone know of a workaround?
Interesting. My guess is that's a security/legal issue that they're working inside of, increasing security. There's a lot of corporations that aren't super excited about the idea of people being able to just do screen record and record that. I imagine as fast as you can figure out how to work around it, they're going to work on trying to work into that. I think that if you took the Lightning, you can't screen record, you're not going to be able to do it. But if you took the Lightning or USB-C out of the iPad into an external recorder, my guess is it would probably come out with audio, and you could probably sort it out there. Jeffrey and then Stuart.
NDI does have a screen capture app for iOS, which you could then put into a computer and capture it that way.
Yeah. Go ahead, Stuart.
You're probably correct on the rights and security issue. Single party recording is something that I know is legal in the US, but is actually banned places like Australia and the UK, which is why a lot of phones that would record conversations in the US have that feature disabled. So this is likely to have been caught up exactly the same way with other areas saying, no, that's not legal here.
Yep. Next question.
Liam says, is there a clever method to normalize video volume? Many videos on various platforms vary widely in volume, and constantly adjusting volume to compensate is frustrating.
Lucas? We can't hear you, Lucas.
your volume is too low.
Your volume's too low.
My volume. Oh no. So yeah, the thing would be, I think we're talking about loudness here. So the program loudness of our clips are different. So I would use a loudness meter to do that, and there you can try to automate it, but it's kind of hard because you have true peak values, and when you go too loud, those true peak values will hit the ceiling, and so you have a 2 pass or something. So I think it's kind of hard to do it automated, if that was the question. But you could, of course, do when you manually mastering, you could do it with a loudness meter like Ulean or WLM.
That's great. Chris, and then Jeff.
Jan Landy actually turned me on to a really cool plugin. It was called Playlist Normalizer or something, and it was designed exactly for this. You put this on your final chain, everything that runs through it, you actually just set it. You say, I want everything to hit 23 LUFS, done. And it fit, and every clip will come out the same.
And it processes the clips?
It is, if I understand your question, I believe so. Yes, it is.
You put the clips in, you get a new set of clips out that are
No, it's live.
Oh, for live play out.
You just put it. So like, let's say, for example, I want background music in my restaurant, and I have a giant playlist of old music and new music at different, amounts of compression, levelize it. I don't.
Digital brick wall limiter.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not so much that it's a limiter, because it's also pulling up the other thing. It's called play. I could get the name of it. It's playlists. So it's a Waves plugin.
Go ahead, Jeff, and then
most streaming services are now starting to incorporate that loudness normalization. If you want to do it to your own files, Isotope RX has a loudness plugin built into that you can set a LUFS level, and it will process the audio to match that.
Yep. And we do have to, as digital folks, we have to get used to this. In radio, it was compressed a lot, on the way out, to just make sure that it all stayed in the same group. So we're kind of in the more natural setting. We have to pay more attention to it. Mickey, you were going to say something about that? Were you saying something?
Yeah, like not really, but anyway, move on.
Okay, all right, Brian, and then Lucas, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, +1 on the isotope stuff that Jeff mentioned, and you can also process these with Adobe Media Encoder if you have that, and it'll process it to a LUFS value.
Yeah, go ahead, Lucas, and then Mickey.
Just I post a link in the chat which has a lot of the standards the different broadcasters and YouTube and Spotify and so on use, because they're all a little bit different. So if you want to comply to everyone, you would have to do it manually, or just use one and hope that they will adjust.
Mickey?
Yeah, there. Sorry, I lost my chain of thought earlier. Reaper, you could do batch processing in Reaper, and you can pick whatever insert you want to use and apply your normalization settings to a bunch of audio files.
And by the way, Reaper is an amazing value. That's all. If you haven't heard of Reaper, Reaper is an it's a multi-channel editing tool that can do live capture. You can put stuff in. It's extremely inexpensive, extremely powerful. Definitely check it out, Reaper. Anyway, next question.
Daniel Ray says, Final Cut 10 Logic user, is there a reliable audio workflow to follow? Compression, limiter, EQ settings, and any quick go-to plugins for quick turnaround shoots, say 1 to 2 person corporate interviews, recorded on MixPre with Sennheiser MKH416s and or MKE2 wireless.
Any specific chain?
What I would do, Daniel, is I would once you figure out what you want to make an effects preset in Final Cut 10. I don't think you have to bother going through to Logic, and that's what I do. And what I specifically do is I remove a little noise, I gain it up, and I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's literally just one thing. I select all my clips, I go to my effects presets, I double click it, it applies it to everything, and it's a starting point.
Go ahead, Greg. Or Mickey.
Oh, that sounds. I'm not that familiar with the workflows in Final Cut, but I mean, as a typical thing, I would tend to use a little EQ at the front, maybe trim off the top and the bottom a bit. Might use just a mild compression, and then bring everything up to level in the master.
That'd be my approach. I might put if I was concerned about it, I might put a brick wall limiter at the top of the, right at the -3 or something like that. Just make sure it doesn't go over that while I'm doing whatever I'm doing. But that'd be right at the very end, and it'd be just like just something to make sure it stays legal. Go ahead, Greg.
But also, if you set your peaks to -6, you're basically in there, for at least a 20, LUFS.
Yeah, Mickey.
Yeah, my typical chain for dialogue would be, of course this varies, but typically it's EQ, and then some WNS or waves, DNS1. I'm tired. DNS1 afterwards, noise reduction afterwards, compression afterwards, and then at the very end, at my final mix bus or my summing mixer, a brick wall limiter.
Yep, absolutely. By the way, just as we touch on Logic, I was talking. I put Logic on my kids' iMacs, and they were getting pretty good at GarageBand. And now I go down there and they're building these little songs in Logic and everything else. It just gets you wondering if you're afraid of Logic. They're 11 and 12 years old and they're sitting there building their little songs. And I said, so would you go back to GarageBand? They're like, oh no, we could never go back to GarageBand. I mean, they're like completely, all in Logic now, as far as, and they're trying to explain to their mother that she should move to Logic outside of GarageBand to do her edits. So anyway, next question.
And this is the 10 and 12-year-old?
11 and 12, yeah.
11 and 12. That's amazing. Rachel says, how do we distinguish good audio when podcasting as a group? Use all sorts of filters How do we distinguish good audio when podcasters use all sorts of filters, music bed tracks, and Jack Foley effects?
Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, it really comes down to making a basic good mix, and unfortunately, a lot of people just still don't know how to do that. For instance, if you're bringing in music from a source, you have to realize that the music is mastered at -0.00001 dB. You can't slide that straight into your podcast. You got to drop it by like 12 right away. And then, it's common to try and pump up the dialogue to get over all the effects and all the music that you're putting in, but drop all that stuff down first. Put your effects and your music in according to the dialogue, which you have that normalized, and typically you'll be fine.
Mickey, and then Lucas, and then Jesse.
Yeah, maybe have a listen to some good, reference material, podcasts that are known to sound good. A podcast from, like, say, if you guys are familiar with 20,000 Hertz, that podcast, of course, it's a podcast about sound. That podcast sounds great.
Good.
Yeah, I think that the mix of effects, music, and dialogue is probably best illustrated from what I've heard with This American Life. If you want to train your ear to how to tell a story and how to pull something together and make it all make sense, it's an amazing amount of work. Like that's not a podcast that you can just record with your friends. You have to remember that they make each one of those episodes over a course of weeks or months. And those are, there's people writing it and editing it and putting it together and moving it around and everything else. So it's not, can I produce that every week on my own? It is more of a listen for what really good audio, like a really good audio experience sounds like, is because they do a mixture of nat sound and music and effects and all kinds of, and they just tell they weave this incredible audio story together. Every time I look at their titles, I'm always like, this is gonna be a boring one. Never, ever is it boring. Lucas, and then Bill, and then Stuart.
Yeah, just on the kind of base level, I'd say it has to be intelligible, and that's it seems hard enough for some people, and I think it comes down to what Greg said. doing a good mix, having a good mix between the elements. But yeah, I think the base quality level, especially for podcasts, is that you can actually understand what people are saying. And the rest is wonderful if you get it, but that's the base thing you have to do first.
Yeah. Stuart and then Bill.
Does it tire you out when you're listening to the podcast, or are you able to listen to it and just take it all in? If you're getting tired trying to just distinguish between the background music and the dialogue, then the mix is useless, bad. You should be able to take it in easily, hear it, comprehend it. So that's an easy way to tell if it's good or bad. Does it tire you out to take part in enjoying it?
Bill and then Greg.
So the way I look at it, sound mixing is a little bit like cooking in this respect. If you want to make tacos on Tuesday night, you can just go get the taco seasoning packet and toss it in. And that's what most of the automated push a button and it works like that controls do. Nothing wrong with that. You'll get a decent taco. You go to a really good restaurant where a chef is blending spices and adding the right amount of cumin and the rest of that, you're going to get an amazing taco. But you have to learn to add the spices correctly. And that's exactly, to me, what audio mixing is.
Greg?
Exactly, Bill. And another two things, dialogue is always king, whether it's podcasting or any, a Zoom thing, anything, if you can't understand the dialogue, you're done. Number two, a soundtrack in general should be totally, you shouldn't be aware of it. Nothing in the track should call attention to itself.
Right.
That's what Stuart was talking about the ease of listening. If it's easy on the ears, that means your brain isn't fighting saying, oh, what was that sound? That doesn't belong there, or that was too loud, stuff like that.
And beyond all the levels and EQ and everything else, a great mic in a soft environment that isn't going to echo with a great preamp, well set up, with the levels, is going to take you a long way. Like you if you record it well, you don't have to touch it up very much to get to where you need to go. And so really focusing on, like, I use this for our live thing because it's convenient and I can move it around. When I do podcasts, and this works pretty well, but when I do podcasts, I use a PR40, and I'm still going into a great preamp. I'm going to record that, and I know that I have a lot of room to work. To make it just the way I want it. So I think that's, you just remember that it's not just the effects tools. If you use your webcam microphone, there's no way to pull it back out of that unscathed. Next question.
Moving on. Felipe says, hey, Felipe, has anyone in this community done any tests, extensive or otherwise, with Elgato's Wave 1 and Wave 3 microphones? Any thoughts about their quality?
I don't think anybody's used them. I admit that I forgot that Elgato made microphones. I know that they make lights and a little converter and some lights. But
well, they're brand new. So yeah. I mean,
okay, yeah, haven't used them yet. So, but I'm now interested. But they won't send them to me because evidently I don't have a large enough YouTube following. I did ask some other things from them. They were like, nope, you're not big enough. I was like, okay. All right, next question.
James Babbitt says, when you order a DPA 4066, how do you configure the mic? Mic color, size, wired or wireless?
Well, the DPAs themselves aren't wireless. So you have to decide. You do have to decide what wireless rig. So you might have a 5-pin or 4-pin, 3-pin. There's all kinds of things that you can get. Now, I have an older one that I did buy as a micro dot. We bought these as micro dots in the past. I would probably commit to a TA4 today because it's a better. The micro dot. The one thing that'll happen with the DPA is that it'll get loose. This little micro dot will get loose. And so I'd rather have it hardwired into a TA4 and then convert it to whatever I need it to do. I think that's going to be a better connection. The TA4 will go into the Shure microphones, by the way. I believe TA5 is the Electros. And then TA3 is kind of the standard little mini XLR kind of setup. So, but the TA4 I think is a pretty good one. And again, I use a lot of Shure microphones, Shure transmitters too. So I think through that. I get the 4066 is Omni. I have this one because we bought a bunch of them that were this color. They come in brown and black. I think if I did it again, I'd probably just get black. We've kind of wanted to just, we've learned to just, it's better than trying to figure out what every skin color is and trying to match them, is to just say, this is, we're not trying to hide it. This is just, this is a microphone and this is what we're using. So I'd probably move to black if I bought another one. I've had this one for almost I don't know, it feels like almost a decade. I'm not sure if it's been quite a decade, maybe 8 years. Guy?
I'm not sure if yours clicks or not, but I believe that they've improved the microdot. I have the newer one. If I can get
it's better.
out. Yeah, it's got a little click now when you turn it. And so I would actually, if you're ever going to go wireless, I would recommend the microdot still. So I'll go against what Alex is going to recommend. Because if you treat it gingerly,
that's historical. You just have to treat it gingerly. And if you're using it for training and it's sitting out on your desk, or like mine is right now, you're not gonna have any problem with it. It's really what happens is it's just the thing that has happened to us on stage with people with DPAs. Over and over and over again on stage, is you have somebody moving it around, a non-technical person moving it around. They loosen the microdot, and now they're up in front of, you're streaming to 50,000 people, and there's a little crackle, and there's nothing you can do. There's nothing. There's no. You're in the ocean with a little crackle, and there's nothing. There's no way to solve it, which is why we moved away from the microdots. But with the click, if that actually works, that could be a good solution. And the microdot is really convenient. It's just been again, like the TriCaster, deep scars. Anyway, for me. Anyway, go ahead, Jeff.
The cable is not able to be disconnected at the headset, is it, on the 4066?
Sorry, say that again.
Are you able to disconnect the cable at the headset from the microphone on the 4066?
I don't,
because I have the Countryman, and you can actually disconnect and replace the cable on the Countryman.
No, this is, at least mine is hardwired in. And I think Countryman, go ahead.
I know a lot of pastors who catch them on doorknobs and rip the cable out.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's nice to be able to replace the cable and not the entire mic.
That's why we still try to get people to tuck them into their shirts. Even if it doesn't, that no one's ever going to see the back of them, we do it specifically so that they don't catch it. And pull their head and mess up our cables. And absolutely, Countryman really lost a lot of ground. We used a ton of Countryman stuff, and the problem they had for a while was there was only one ear, and there was just this constant stress of it floating out away from it. And DPA had a dual ear that fixed it, and Countryman was just a little slow on the dual ear. DPA also had a little bit of a better response at the low end, and so those two things had us move to DPAs. But I think Countryman has done well at innovating and trying to kind of get back into that game. But they kind of lost ground there because of that lack of two ears, and the low end wasn't quite as good as the DPA. Jesse?
Yeah, Countryman's a bit noisier as well, and I use a lot of Countryman stuff, and I do have to replace cables every year or two with regular use. And they do offer a dual ear H6 headset. They're pretty good.
Yep. Next question.
Lucas says, is there a Windows equivalent to Audio Hijack?
Not that we found.
Go ahead, Stuart. We can't hear you.
After unmuting, the VB audio cable, and there's a mixer on there, but there's nothing with the same node-based graphical interface. I
guess I would say the closest thing would be Waves, right? Waves is almost there. I don't know. Does Waves does a lot more than Audio Hijack? But there's nothing like simple and inexpensive that just kind of lets you reroute and reprocess.
There is a dongle, but it's a little bit pricey.
Yeah,
it's you go to your Apple store.
Right. Buy a Mac. Next question.
Victor says, has anyone had experience with the Townsend Labs Sphere L22 microphone modeling system?
Yeah, go ahead, Bill. Nikki,
some people in the voiceover specific groups talk about this rig occasionally. It's designed to supposedly mimic the responses of some famous microphones of the past that are highly regarded. I don't know if there's any consensus on whether it actually works to do that or not.
Go ahead, Nikki, and then Jesse.
Yeah, I've never tried it, but I'm quite skeptical of artificial digital modeling. But the people over at the guys over at Production Experts, formerly Pro Tools Experts, are quite fond of it. So I don't know.
It looks cool. How much does it cost? Let's see. Go ahead, Jesse.
Got a buddy who uses the Slate Digital, similar microphone. It's called the VMS, and he gets some pretty good results. Microphone modeling, different company though.
Yeah, interesting.
Just on price, it says
$1,500.
$2,599 US.
Yeah, this one said I see one on, oh, these are used. Yep, absolutely. So it's expensive, but be interesting. Greg?
Yeah, the only system I've ever heard that I thought was good was the Slate. It really impressed me. It knocked out 5 or 6 classic mic styles, and I mean, if you A/B them with the real things, I mean, it's virtually undetectable.
Interesting. Bill?
I just think that if you really want to spend that kind of money for this kind of a tool, somebody needs to do some double-blind listening tests with panels and make sure that there's an actual real difference rather than the just perception of the nameplate and other things going on, because audio is not that heavy a lift in terms of recording, particularly human speech. It's not a gigantic overtone full.
Yeah, but I will say that every mic has its own. I mean,
it does.
Again,
but
when you get started with audio, kind of like when you get started with skiing, pretty much anything you put on your feet when you're skiing is all the same. Once you have skied for a while, you get pretty picky about how your skis and how your boots work, because they do start to affect your performance. So when you get started with VO, with doing anything with voice, you can probably get away with an SM58 and it'll all be like, no, it's good enough, and you can do some work on it. But after you've done it for a while, you'll start to go, well, I really like the way the DPA does this, or the PR40 does this, or the Neumann does this, or it's the way it interacts with my voice specifically, and it's different for every person as far as what that is. But it won't matter at the beginning, but it will matter as you keep moving. Go ahead, Jeff.
Haven't used the L22, but it was on my list for this summer to get one and check out, but then COVID happened, so maybe it'll happen this fall. I think one of the things that make these great is they have to start with a good microphone in order to do the digital modeling. So on its own, it's a decent microphone. The second thing to remember is that while it may say that it's emulating a 251 or something like that, Telefunken, which Telefunken 251 did they model? Because these are vintage microphones, so 251s are not going to sound exactly the same. So will it replace those? No, but it does give you, for $1,500 and some software, a lot of color options. Are they exactly those mics? No, but it's easy to switch back and forth, and after the fact, you could switch between those mics. So in a mix, you could punch through very quickly several different microphones and see which one you like best in the context of a mix.
That's interesting. Yeah, Bill?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I agree with you, Alex. I have a Neumann hanging in there because I want to take away all those variables of it could be the mic messing up any signal chain. But I also talk with a lot of professional VO guys, and I've heard more and more of them who are saying, somebody called, they needed a change, so I did it in my car with my remote rig, which was a little mic hung on the windshield mirror, and I sent that in and they cut it into the system and it worked just fine.
And over top of a sound bed with some sound effects and everything else, they might be able to mix it in for a moment. But man, I would be mad if someone I sure would be mad if someone sent me something that sounded like what I can imagine that would sound like. Greg?
And the other thing is that not everybody sounds great on any particular mic. You can have, for instance, you could have a U87 and it's not, you're going to eventually run into somebody that it's, just the quality of their voice doesn't match, what the mic is doing. And for instance, might sound better on a 414, which I think are really bright.
I went into a place that had a bunch of mics, and to pick my mic for doing voiceovers, this is 30 years ago. And I went through probably 15 or 20 mics, of just listening to them. And it turned out the one that worked well was the EV10, which is not made anymore and was stolen from my radio station. Not that I'm bitter, but it was it's about half the size of an EV20. And it for whatever reason, my voice sounded great, and it's just whatever it's the middle of its aisle of what it did worked with my voice really well. And so it's just an interesting thing. But that's why you have to kind of listen through that. And someone's feeding back to me. I think that's Greg. Sorry, Greg, you have maybe have a delay or something, but your echo cancellation isn't working. Mickey and then Jason.
Yeah, just to Greg's point, like, you know, when we do narrative, when we shoot narratives, we often bring a selection of microphones to the table reads, just so that we get a sense of, okay, this character, this artist, this actress or actor sounds best on this mic. This one sounds best on this mic, and then we typically gauge, like, generally what would be the best fit for this film.
Right.
And we base our mic selection on that because it sounds totally different from voice to voice.
Yep, absolutely. Jason?
I mean, I understand the allure of this kind of an approach. At the end of the day, if you don't understand what you're modeling, you're wasting your time. So, like, start by understanding these mics. You know, it's not just like you're going to start flipping them and go, oh, that's a Neumann. No, you don't know what it sounds like.
Well,
It's
and
not
again,
your first mic. That's my point.
It's your environment. Yeah, absolutely. Like, you shouldn't buy, really, really nice, skis the first time when you're learning how to ski. Like, it's not the right time. Rent the skis for a while, and then move up to what you want to do. All right, next question.
Okay. Raul Santos wants to know, what are you using to measure audio and video delay?
So a lot of us who have to deal with this all the time can look at it and be pretty close, pretty fast. We have to do it all the time, and you can feel it. What I'm looking for typically is I'll have someone say P words, because it's really hard to say P. And I don't even know if my sync is synced up right, because I changed my pipeline. But it's really hard to say P without your lips coming together and exploding out. So it's really easy to see what that is. So a lot of us will just look at it and do that. There are tools. Matchbox by Hitomi is the kind of the leading tool that does this. It plays out a test signal from your source and a separate audio signal, or you can use an iPad now. And then the receiving source looks at that video signal, compares it to the audio signal. It knows what it's looking at and what it should be getting. And it's able to give you back an accurate view of it's 165 milliseconds or 123 milliseconds off. And then you can just dial it in. The other way to do that is to play something out. And actually, when we're doing, for instance, an HLS stream out of our elementals or whatever, I will literally go in and grab segments of it. I'll have someone close just a clapboard. And then I just I take that segment into Final Cut, and I just look at what the offset is, and I make that adjustment, and then I put it back in. And now I know that at the encoder, when it went out, my offset is correct. And so but there's a lot of things in the chain that can move that around. For instance, YouTube tends to be about 45 seconds. The audio tends to be 45 seconds ahead of the video in live, but will resync itself in the VOD. So if you sync to the live version on YouTube, your audio will be just a little, or your video will be just a little ahead in the VOD, which is actually acceptable because our brain corrects for our brain corrects for the eyes better than the other way around, because when people are far away from us and talk to us, their video is actually ahead of their audio. Like if you're 30 feet or 40 feet away from me and you start yelling at me, your video to me, the real life video to my eyes, the light is getting to me faster than the audio is. And so our brain is really good at just adjusting for that. Whereas if the audio goes the other way, our brain says there's something wrong pretty quickly. So you get a couple frames of you can be off by about 60 milliseconds, and most people won't notice. Once you get more than that, people will think it's out of sync. Anyway, I think we beat that. And I meant to say milliseconds, not seconds. It's not 45 seconds off. It's 45 milliseconds off. That's an order of magnitude error there. All right, next question.
Karen Foote says, Tucker has mentioned learning basics of gain staging as the first thing to get solid on when it comes to audio. Does anyone have a go-to YouTube video that breaks this down?
Greg?
There's a ton of YouTube videos out there on this very topic. Everybody's got a slightly different spin on exactly what this is. But in essence, it's the old Italian principle of a gazzetta gazzata. There's a certain level goes into something, and it goes out of at some other level, and it goes into something else. So you have to make sure that the Gazata level matches the Gazinta level for each new thing along the chain. It's
we
just
need to do a video about that. That's the
Gazata,
video.
yeah,
Why don't we have a video about the Gazintas and the Gazaltas?
I don't
Got to hire Polly Walnuts to do that.
I don't know, but it's basically matching the output of something to the input of the next thing in the chain, and making sure that that each new piece of gear is seeing the level that it wants to see.
Right.
You know, adjusting it after that, and then the output of that thing, you know, outputting something that the next piece is going to want.
And when you see that 1K tone, when you hear it, sometimes for hours, as they work these things out in events, what everyone's doing there is syncing up all those levels. They're trying to make sure that everybody at Unity, everybody has the same number.
Absolutely. And when you come into issues on that regard is when you have a series of different style meters. You have VU meters, you have peak meters, you have DFS meters, and you have to understand what the reference frequency or the reference level is for each of those types of meters.
Right. Absolutely. Bill?
And they make a device, a signal injector. It looks like a little XLR barrel that you put on the very first thing, and it sends out a fixed, even level. And it's a great tool when you're ringing out some sort of a PA system or something like that.
Absolutely. Next question.
Raul Santos says, can we go over an audio hijack flow? And I will say that we actually did that, I believe it was last week, and I'm going to post a link in the chat as the host, and it's a link to the show that we did, and all we did was talk about hijack and loopback for
second
an hour.
hour was all audio hijack in the second hour. Audio
There's also
hijack and
a
loopback.
great moment where I accidentally mute myself while I'm talking, and I can't figure out what I've done wrong. So it's a good little comic moment of
That's right, folks. We're professionals.
Yeah, exactly. All right, next question.
Find my mouse. James Babbitt says, audio, could you compare the Countryman E6 and the DPA 4066 omnidirectional headset microphones?
I don't know if I've compared them head to head. I will say that I believe that the 4066 will have better bass or a better low end than the E6 from the I haven't taken the ones that are out right now, but if they haven't changed in the last 8 years, the DPA's low end is much better than the E6. Mickey, Jesse, and then Greg.
Yeah, I have used the H6, the Countryman H6, which I believe is the same element as the E6, except the H1 has two ear hooks. It would come out, if you do a side by side, it would sound a lot thinner and brighter than the Countryman.
Yep. Wait, then the DPA?
Oh, sorry, than the DPA.
Yep, absolutely. Jesse and then Greg.
Yeah, and you got to be careful with the cables on the Countrymans too, because they can become a bit loose. And yeah, they have a slightly higher self noise as well as compared with the DPAs. So,
Greg.
And if you're moving in that price range, I don't think there's any reason to not get a DPA. They're the best sounding headset mics I've ever heard.
Yep. All right, Bill.
There also used to be a professional microphones used to come with a plot. They would actually run that microphone before you bought it through a signal analyzer, and they would give you a little strip, and it had a line down the center, and it would show you the mic's performance at various frequencies. If you look at that, and I would imagine these manufacturers have these online, you can sometimes see this mic rolls off at the low end a lot, or this mic has a pronounced peak in the mid range. So those can be useful if you learn how to read.
Next question.
Rich Susan says, anyone using a QSC TouchMix 30 Pro mixer? I like the ability to use an iPad. QSC TouchMix.
Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I've never used that, but there's a ton of mixers that use an iPad as a controller.
Yeah, the QSC I have seen in events a couple times, and the audio was not. I don't know whether it was the operator or the process, but the audio was not the best that it could be. I think I find them to be a little squirrely. I mean, if I was excited about it in that price range, if I was excited about that using it with the iPad, I'd probably lean more towards an XR18 or even at that price range, almost an X32. Jesse?
I think the QSC touch mix you can't use with an iPad. I think that's the whole point of having the touch mix. It's just the controls on the device itself. And yeah, I think their speakers, monitors are a bit better as far as the the layout. It leaves some room for improvement.
It's got 14 outputs. That's pretty cool.
But at $9.99, you're an inch away from an X32 rack, which you can use with an iPad, and it's going to have a lot more power than that is. So I'm not sure. I mean, I would much rather, if I was at $9.99, I'd much rather spend a couple $100 more and get an X32 than to use the touch mix. Go ahead, Lucas.
Sorry, my button is not working correctly. So and you have a more flexibility in terms of going to different protocols with the X32. You can go to Dante with an expansion card or something, and the touch mix is locked, so you can go anywhere else if you need to.
And I'll bluntly say that I am pretty much, when I think about what we're going to get, it's Behringer all the way up to Yamaha to the QL1. And then I go Yamaha to Calrec. So it's like I will just state that that's how I view mixers after a long time of using them. A lot of different ones that I feel like there are zones for me of how much I'm going to spend and what I'm going to use. Behringer was horrible until they bought Midas, and I think somehow the Midas engineers kind of changed the whole whatever inside of them. I don't like the analog mixer still, but the X32, the XR8, 12 and 18 and 16 are really amazing values for what they do. Jeff?
Yeah, I love the XR18. But if you were going to jump into this price range of the Touch Mix 30, I would probably look for a console that has physical faders and supports an iPad or tablet for wireless control. Because if your Wi-Fi drops out or that touch drops out, you really want to have some physical faders to grab onto.
Yeah, and we use with the rack mount of the XR32 is the X Touch, is nice because we just simplify it into that of what we need. But then we can go into it. And I do like the faders. What we like about the rack is that we send a rack out that has the whole mixer in it. There's a TF line version of that, but I don't think it has Dante, or it doesn't have Dugan built into it. That's the reason we kind of go that direction. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, the TF, they do have the Dugan built into it.
Okay, there was something missing in it that we looked at in the rack mountable TF that had us go, no.
Maybe the rack mount doesn't. I have the TF3, right, and I know the TF3 does.
Yeah,
and it has physical faders, like Jeff says.
Well, yeah, and the rack mountable version of the TF had something that was critical that was missing, and I don't remember what it was, but it was like a no-go. Like we were just immediately like, nope, we can't use that because it was missing some one little thing, and I can't now remember what that was. All right, next question.
I think Dugan was a recent add in firmware.
Oh, okay, Dugan, adding the Dugan, because I know that without Dugan we wouldn't consider it an event mixer. Like it just wouldn't show up on the radar for us. Jesse, and then Lucas.
I just wanted to put a quick plug for this app called Mixing Station. That's a customizable sort of app that you can buy, and it works with most of the most popular digital mixers that are out there, and you can just put your layout however you want to and use it that way.
Nice. Was there one other person? I felt like I said Jesse. All right, next question.
Nick Walker says, looking at either a Zoom LiveTrack L8 or Behringer XR12 for use with ATEM Mini, any preferences, physical versus digital audio mixer?
Well, the Zoom records as well, right? So the Zoom records internally. So that's going to be an advantage for you in the field. But otherwise, I would get the XR12.
Can't the Behringer record?
Not the XR12 won't record internally, but you can. Okay. You could you could find a way to record it, but
I had a USB port for.
But if you're using it in conjunction with the ATEM Mini, I would probably lean towards the XR12. Go ahead, Jason, and then Lucas.
Yeah. +1 for that. I mean, Zoom makes very kind of user-facing, very niche things. So my inclination is yeah, if you're going to record a podcast and you're not worried about video at all, then yeah, sure, go for a Zoom. If not, get a Behringer.
Go ahead, Lucas.
Yeah, and if it's about, I mean, the question is kind of strange to me because both mixes are digital, so I think it's more about having faders or not. And I would say in a live situation, it's definitely better to have faders because you don't necessarily have to look down on something. So perhaps an X-Touch with the XR12 or the Zoom then.
And I will say that I haven't used Zoom for a couple years. We definitely got some of their mixers in the past, and I just thought that their preamps were trash. And so that's why I stopped buying Zoom products, was just that I didn't like the preamps. And to me, the preamps are very important. Greg, and then Greg.
Yeah, I've got an L12 that I got a while ago for my little my multicam crew, and they like it a lot. And it's light, and the pre's aren't bad. They must have made some.
They definitely could have made better improvements. I got some of the. I was super excited about Zoom and the early mixers, and got into it and just had so many problems with them being so sensitive and having no headroom and being just not great quality, that I kind of wrote off Zoom altogether. But it definitely, this is definitely a completely different form factor from the original ones. So they definitely could have improved it.
And the thing is, if you're going to use it with the ATEM Mini, then you still have the balanced unbalanced issue.
Right. Yeah, Guy.
So.
And then Chris.
Yeah, there's a great video that Curtis Judd just put up with the Rodecaster Pro working with the ATEM Mini, and I was amazed at how smooth it sounds. With the latest firmware update, they definitely ironed out some kinks, and that device with the Aphex effects, because they bought Aphex, so you get the aural exciter, you get the big bottom, I believe it is. Like, that used to cost like $500 for that as a strip.
I used to have that.
Yeah. It's bucks, and so now it's $599, and you get faders, you get 4 headphone outputs. He's using the monitor out. I think he's going 1/4-inch TRRS to a mini jack. He said that he'd put a link in his description for that cable, because I want to get that exact setup and mimic it, because it sounds good. And having the full faders plus the punch buttons, if you ever want to bring up like a jingle or something ahead of time if you're doing a show. So I definitely look at that same price range.
Chris?
To me, when I look at buying big consoles, I'm almost more interested in the outputs than the inputs. And for this particular question, Nick Walker, my experience with the Live Track is that it doesn't have very many outputs. Like you can't even do aux sends, and that to me is a no-go right there.
All right, that's good. Next question.
I'm going to turn off that very bright web browser over there. Michael Vosbein says, anyone use a DBX 286S single channel vocal FX chain? It has a preamp, a compressor, an enhancer, de-esser, and noise gate. Any thoughts?
Go ahead, Bill.
That Symmetrics makes a thing that's similar. The vocal chain in one strip was a popular thing for many years. They work fine. I'm not sure that they're as flexible as the digital options that we have today, but they work.
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
+1 on what he said. Dollar for dollar, they're not bad. They're also not amazing. I would, if I were starting today, I probably wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah, I'd rather spend money on a digital board. Spend more money on a digital board that can do the same thing. And because the other thing is that it's now doing it internally, and it can be routed in different ways through that process, rather than as an insert. And so I think that I would rather have it in my board than external. I don't say that very often, that I would want to move a specialty item into the thing, but I think that you have more flexibility. And I believe that most compression and those types of things within these boards is fairly commoditized at this point. I mean, at least comparable to the DBX. I mean, there's some really nice compressors, but I think that this one is good, but not amazing. And you can get good on many digital boards at this point. I think it's the last question coming up.
We have one more. TJ Asher says, Alex mentioned that one specific mic matched his voice. What was he listening to and listening for in order to determine a mic matched his voice the best?
I don't think it was scientific. So what I did is I was in a pretty soft room with the headphones on, and without anything else to distract me. I got to the distance that I thought made sense for the given mic, and I talked into it, and I thought to myself, do I like how I sound? And so and I like, is that how I want people to hear me when I do a voiceover, when I'm talking about a product or something like that, or I'm doing something? Is that the sound that I want? I think that I don't think I can't say that it was a scientific thing as much as a quality of, just looking at it and going, I probably maybe could find a scientific reason for that, but I was left with, I really like the way I sound on this, and that's how I'm
as a
sound.
qualitative mechanism. Wouldn't you be better off doing that test by recording yourself and then comparing all the mics that you've tested sequentially?
You're absolutely right. And I have this dream of building a semi-anechoic chamber in my garage, like that I can bring a whole bunch of mics in and have me do it, have my wife do it, have my kids do it. So I get a bunch of different qualities of audio against all the mics, and then put up a big sample of us all saying the same thing. So that you can kind of
just go to an audio equipment store and have a semi-anechoic chamber.
Yeah, it's just that they don't, like I would rather control it. And the reason that I didn't do it back then, it was 30 years ago. 30 years ago, recording your mic was not as seamless as it is now. I'll go ahead, Greg, and then Jason, and then Bill.
Yeah, and the other thing that we always have to remember, I think, about sound in general, is that it's a feel thing. It's not scientific. It's it's very subjective. I might have a different opinion of what mic sounds best for you, Alex, than you do.
Well, yeah, and absolutely. And the thing is that I can give you, like, I'll build this eventually. I'll build this little diagram of how I light my face, or how I do whatever. When it comes to lighting, I can draw you a diagram that says this will work 90% of the time. Now, what my brother does when he walks in as a DP, my brother's a DP and a Steadicam operator, and really high end. And when he comes in, what he does with the lights doesn't look anything like what I do with the lights, and the person looks way better, so than what I do. But I can hit the mark that it's good, it's reasonably good. I can get you into the ball, so I think that with mics, it's the same thing, where we can say, you can look at a graph and I can probably qualitatively say, this graph represents a pretty good impact for the voice. But that last 10% that Greg's talking about is art, and there's always like good, really good technically, and then there's art, and that is kind of like that last 10% in my opinion. Bill, and then Jason.
Yeah, I'm going to support the same idea. I have noticed, for me, one of the things that shocked me most is that I would record a spot and then someone would come back and have a change of a line. So I would try to just cut in that line. And on a different day, with a different headspace, a different approach to the mic, it would not match very well at all. Now, maybe somebody like Courtney, who has a beautiful voice and it's kind of in its space all the time, can walk up and do that. But I know that I have to work at sounding like my last recording to match it. And that's a mental thing, not an equipment thing.
Jeff, and then Courtney, and then Jason.
Guy's not here to say it, so I'll say it for him. It's about story. So it's, as you listen to the mic, in that first couple of seconds, which one makes the emotional content connection to you, and so right away. And it's through the gaining experience, you'll know right away which is the right mic, or more importantly, this mic's not the right mic. Let's try another one.
Yeah, Courtney.
For me, my voice sounds much better in the morning, which is why you guys always have the benefit of hearing it at its best. And in the afternoon, my vocal cords tighten up after a day's worth of use. And I find if I'm doing voiceover, schedule it first thing in the morning, and you'll sound great.
All my voiceovers are done right when I wake up. Not when I wake up, but like within an hour. If I do a voiceover for somebody, it's always within the first hour that I'm up, is when I sound the best, in my opinion. Go ahead, Jason.
At the end of the day, I would say stop listening to other people, stop watching YouTube, and truly, make it as clean as humanly possible. And EV10 is an awesome choice, probably because you're a baritone. I have not seen one in a good decade at least.
It's been, I don't think they made them for 20 years. So anyway, that's but you know, I only had it for that. I only had it for a couple months. I was back to doing voiceovers with an EV20. Anyway, so that's our end of our audio hour, or audio 50 minutes. Hope everybody enjoyed that. It was I think it went well, and I think that this having people ask questions before we get started at between 6:40 and 7, I think was very successful. We had a lot more going on there, so I think we'll keep on egging you all on. The attendees did an amazing job. Great questions, lots of them, and very well thought out. So thank you very much. Panelists, of course, did a great job talking about it and having the discussion. Thanks to everybody else. So Mickey and Phil and Chris and everyone else in the behind the scenes that's making all of this work. And I just appreciate everyone showing up all the time. I love this 3 hours, and so it's a lot of fun every day. Anyway, so thank you all. And Mickey, go ahead and hit it. Are you still here? There we go. So remember that we've got Chris Summers. Chris Summers is tomorrow talking about remote camera controls. And then Brian Vander Ark from the Verve Pipe is going to be here on Thursday. Then education. So we'll have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.